Mel, 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 Mel. Everybody, I'm Cantonese Cat. Everybody, Cantonese Cat Riot here. The monthly chart. It shows violence so far this month. We have a little bit of a very, very nice Dragonfly Doji, which actually can serve as a very important bottom. I found this to be quite improbable, but if I was looking through the price action over the last cycle, I did thought that after the halving, price is going to be a lot more positive for a stock like Riot. And sure enough, like the last cycle was very, very positive after the halving, and so far we have a very, very nice kind of bullish Dragonfly Doji candle here so far. If the month closed like this is a pretty decent candle here. I'll show you a few things as to why, in addition to just having a very nice bullish Dragonfly Doji bottom over here. If you look at the volume weighted average price or VWAP from the cycle low, you can see at what price are holders underwater and at what price are holders in profit. Just early in the month, like pretty much everywhere was underwater, and next thing you know, just from this big giant doji candle with a big giant wick, right now most people are actually in profit. So these lines usually serve as either resistance, like it did over here, or it can flip it into support, right? And so far, initially I thought that was going to serve as resistance again because we broke down, but now it looks like it's serving as support, which is a pretty miraculous recovery, if you will. If you look at other indicators to see what Riot is doing, I mean, it basically just kind of went sideways for a whole year. It didn't really do anything for a whole year. It basically just bounded between this volume shelf here and this volume shelf over here. And it back tested, I guess, the volume shelf back down here. And everybody thought, I guess, the price is way too low down here. No, it's supposed to be back at this volume shelf. So price just kind of bouncing back and forth here. Maybe this is the spring that you're looking for to really tell you that, yeah, there's a big demand over here and that there's no need to really go back down and test that anymore. Price bounce over here up and down, and it still needs to get around over like the 20-21 range before it's really going to have like a pretty decent bullish continuation. You still have a lot of resistance up here potentially on the volume shelf, so this is a very, very bullish development, and this might end up pushing price back above to the top of the range to challenge this range. And when it breaks this range, you might talk about trying to break above this area over here with a bunch of price history up there, maybe around the 30s and 40s. So we'll see what happens. So far, you're having some pretty bullish development that's happening here. If you look at the Ichimoku cloud, giving you a little bit of a mixed picture here because you have the Tenkan initially cross above the Kijin, and the price is still underneath both, which is fine. That doesn't bother me because if you look over here on the last cycle, even with Mara, you have price kind of underneath the Tenkan and Kijin over here. Next thing you know, is just need a little bit of bullish energy and a little bit of volume to push you above that range over here. And Riot is basically, bullish cross, bearish cross. It doesn't matter. Price is oscillating, building up a lot of energy over here for a whole year. And it doesn't really take a whole lot for volume in addition to kind of push it back above, to get back to the top of the range and see whether or not we can push back above. Again, if we push back above, you're talking about like 30s, potentially even like low 40, right? The other indicators initially was not looking that great, but now it's looking much better. You have the 20-month moving average is still pointing up. Initially, price is way above that. Well, sorry, way below that. So you think whether or not you have a breakdown below the positive sloping 20-month moving average. But if it's positive sloping, most likely it's not going to serve as pretty bad resistance. And sure enough, price just kind of went down, tested that, yeah, found support, went back up, bounced. So far, price is still setting a significant amount of time on the upper part of Bollinger Band. You do have a lot of Bollinger Band squeeze over here because price has been going sideways for a whole year. It's going to try and pick a direction whenever it's done squeezing. It's going to be pretty strong when it happens. And because the price is on the upper part, because the 20-month average is pointing up, most likely the squeeze is going to end up causing an expansion with price going upwards, right? The other indicators are pretty clear in terms of what the whales are doing. You can look at the blackhead and it's pretty clear that the whales are accumulating. Not as strong as they did over the last cycle, but they've been accumulating for over close to like a year now. There's increasing inflow over here. So none of this is really a mystery anymore. If you look at the weekly shows you a very, very nice bottoming candle, hammer bottom over here. This is a very classic, hammer bottom. And when you see something like that, there's a good chance that you have found a very important local bottom, and it could end up, just pushing price up a lot higher. And showing up, you got this big giant green candle with this big giant volume over here. I don't think we've seen volume like this really during this cycle so far. This is the strongest weekly candle, and so far it's only Thursday. We have another day to go. So so far you have some pretty bullish developments happening, but you still have a lot of resistance above. I don't want you to think there's all clear skies ahead. This volume candle is helping to show some buyer commitment, maybe potentially push price up a lot higher, but you still have a lot of resistance above that needs to be worked up for Riot, unfortunately. Am I bullish on this? Yes. Am I in it? No, because I have like 6 other miners, but I'm still finding this to be a pretty attractive setup here. Now, the problem, one of those resistance I was talking about is like it's basically kind of broke down underneath the cloud, and it's doing a little bit of back test so far. It's been getting rejected, hasn't it? Unfortunate, right? That's what happens when you break down a level and try to back test. You can get some rejections here. Do I think the price is going to push back up? Yes. Why? Because price just been oscillating between the weekly cloud, up and down. And when it's up, it didn't really serve as that good a support. So why do you think it's down? It's going to serve as very strong resistance. I don't think it's necessarily going to be the case, right? But so far it's just been oscillating, but it bounced for the bottom of this range, which is not unexpected. I think it's probably going to end up going back to the top of the range, and we'll see how it reacts after it gets back there. But you do have a little bit of resistance here, push back up before you get up there. And after you get up there, there must still be some resistance up above. So we're not out of the waters yet when it comes to Riot here. What is the trend doing? The trend is still bullish, although you're a little bit at risk for having a little bit of a bearish cross between the 20 and 50 here, but it's still a bull trend. And it just bounced from a positive sloping 100. It went up very, very high on big volume. So you're going to want to give it a benefit of the doubt here in terms of Riot. Like it's doing something that's relatively positive here. And that's really the key story for Riot. And if you look at, I'm not even want to talk about like the cycle, how do you say that? I'm not even going to talk about like the cycle of price targets, because right now price just kind of been rejected, from the 0.236 around here, and it's just kind of been oscillating sideways along the 0.136. Once it breaks above, then we can talk about how far the cycle is going, what Bitcoin's doing, and what I might expect Riot to end up doing in terms of the upper targets. I'll talk about that later. Okay, it's too early for us to do that right now. Another stock that looked just like Riot is BTBT. It basically has a very similar setup to Riot. It's just kind of gone sideways over here for quite some time. And what you're seeing here is, what are the whales doing? It's a lot of inflow. Actually, the inflow looks a little bit stronger than Riot, doesn't it? If you look at the Ichimoku cloud, you're going to see a very, very similar picture of having a bullish cross, but you don't quite have a risk for bearish cross. The price is still underneath the both the Tenkan and Kijun down here. It's got a very, very similar look to it. If you look at the bull in Japan, very same thing, although it's not having quite just the strong bounce that Riot has had so far, and price is still underneath the 20-month moving average. But I still think that probably over the next couple of days, you might end up getting a little bit of a bounce, and you might end up closing the month above it. Even if it ends up closing below, it doesn't bother me that much, because you need confirmation, and most likely, based on what I'm looking at, I think May could end up being potentially a pretty positive month for miners, and BTBT may not be an exception to the rule. You can see a previous cycle, it also kind of closed down here, but the next thing you know, you have a big giant candle. I mean, obviously it didn't work out very well for BTBT because it was a bear market then, but you can see the price, the 20-month moving average is still pointing up, so this is probably not going to serve as very, very good resistance, probably going to serve as better support than resistance. And if it bounced back up, you might end up having a little bit of a tweezer bottom over here too. The downtrend also seems to be on lower volume, so I think that this red candle over here is a little bit low commitment. Most likely you're going to end up having some pretty decent reversal afterwards. So I just kind of came up with a lot of justification as to why I think that this is going to be having some bullish reversals here. But if you just look at BTBT, like right now it's getting magnet into this big giant volume shelf over here, and it's finding support at this big giant finger of the volume shelf. You still have a lot of resistance up here. from a couple years ago. A lot of work probably still needs to be done, just like Riot, to kind of push price up a lot higher. But unfortunately, it is what it is, right? If you're able to break above all this junk right here, I think you might end up hitting around like $7 or $8 in a hurry if you're able to break above 4. And up here, you might end up oscillating up here for a little bit while longer before potential bullish continuation. But you still have a lot of resistance up here, and it's important to know that. If you look at the weekly chart for BTBT, you can still see that, yeah, it's underneath the cloud, so you have a lot of potential resistance to fight back above to get back above to get up higher, right? Not to say that it won't, because I do think that on the weekly you do have a pretty nice hammer bottom over here, but it's just been lagging behind Riot by a lot, even though it had a very similar look for a very long time. Do I think it'll catch up? Probably, but not now. The other things is, if you ask about the trend, it kind of lost its 20, 50. You had a bearish cross over here this week, unfortunately. And actually last week. So because of this bearish cross, it no longer has a full bull trend behind its back, but doesn't necessarily mean that it's not going to do very well moving forward. Sometimes all it takes is a few candles for you to kind of reverse this, a little bit of a bearish cross over here. Just because you have bullish cross, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to end up pushing price a lot higher. I think price just been going sideways for way too far, way too long. And you're just going to end up having some of these bearish crosses over here, but it's not conducive because 50 is still very widely separated from 100. It looks like it just kind of bounced above the 100. So a little bit weaker, lagging behind, not a full bull trend, something to be aware of. Is this the end of the world? Probably not. But that's BTBT. Still doesn't have bullish confirmation yet, but most likely it's going to end up following what the other miners are doing anyway. It's just lagging behind. And I still think that this, bullish hammer bottom candle looking thing over here means something last week, just like, it did over here. And just like it did for Riot. But unfortunately, this is still a laggard. We'll see what happens, maybe forming a little bit like an Adam and potential Eve pattern over here, so it might not be as impulsive as the other miners that I've shown you so far. But anyway, just want to spend a little time talking about BTBT because it did look similar to Riot, but it didn't quite have the same bullish continuation or bullish breakout as Riot did. We'll see what happens. Thank you so much for listening. Have a good one. Bye.